Hello and welcome to Python Fundamentals. In this course, we learn the underpinning Python programming skills, preparing for our journey towards mastering the Django Framework and the Python programming language. This tutorial is part of a series of tutorials. You can find the link to the whole playlist in the video description. This tutorial is from our Python Programming Fundamentals for Django Developers course, which you can find and purchase on Udemy. You will find all the latest and updated tutorials, as well as resources and assessments to help accelerate your learning of the subject. The link to the course, which will always provide the best price, can be found in the video description. At this point, if you have been following the previous tutorials, we've learned the basic anatomy of a function, how to call a function. So something that we haven't discussed yet is the return. So what we can say of a function in general is that a function takes arguments defined by the function signature parameters. It performs operations, runs some code, and then it returns a value or potentially an object. The return value from a function is normally known as the return value. Now, remember that all Python functions have a return value. Even if we don't specify one, something will be returned from the function. So just to recap again, here we have the function signature at the top and we have the body. The return value or the return statement is normally found at the end here of your function. And you can see that we utilize the return keyword and then we specify what to return. Now we can return any value, whether it be a list or a dictionary tuple, a set, or any other type of object. Here, in this case, we return the value from the calculation that we've completed inside of the body of the function. Let's go ahead and see this in action. So we'll stick with calculation, but this time we won't include anything at all. And we'll add the temporary code here, the pass here. So this pass is going to act as a temporary piece of code, which is going to tell Python that this function will have some code later on. This function should work correctly. We shouldn't have any errors. So if we didn't utilize pass here, we would cause an error. So let's just exit this. It would cause an error. So if I try to run this piece of code here, we have an indentation error. So pass is a way of adding something in your code as a placeholder just to get the code started. You can see the function does run. Now, what's interesting here, we haven't specified a return in our function, but what you will see is that we have actually returned something. We printed the function here, and you can see that we've returned none. So by default, even if we don't specify a return from our function, it will return none. We have already seen an example where we return something, so let's go ahead and return. In this case, let's return a string, just called string. Okay, so let's go ahead and return that. You can see that we can return this string. Now it is possible for us to work with multiple values, so we can return multiple values. So let's imagine we had one parameter, passing one parameter, a. So we're passing the number 10. Let's go ahead and say x equals a plus 10, and then x equals a plus 20. Okay, so we've got two calculations here. Sorry, that needs to be y. Okay, so we've got two variables storing the two calculations. We're going to pass in our argument 10. We're going to pass that into our function here. So we want to return the value x and y. So let's go ahead and say x, comma, and then y. So if we now perform this, you can now see that we're returning a tuple here with 20 and 30. So we're returning both values here. If you're not too sure what data type it is, let's not forget we can use type. So let's just wrap this around with type, and that will then describe and tell us what type of data is being returned here. So you can see here that we're returning a tuple. So let's now use some knowledge that we've learned previously in this course, and that's using an if statement. So let's say if a is equal to 1, then we're going to perform this. So we're going to return let's return, for example, a plus 1. And then let's go for an else. Oh no, let's go for an else if. So else if a is equal to 2, then we're going to return a plus 2. Okay, so you can see here, I'm emphasizing the point that our function can have multiple returns, depending on potentially our condition here. If a equals 1 or a equals 2, we're going to return something separate. So let's go ahead and add 1 here. We'll remove the type. Just be careful with the parentheses. So we're just going to print off calculator and we're going to pass in the number 1. So we should be able to match here. So let's go back and have a look. And you can see that we're returning 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. So let's go ahead and change this to 2. And you can see now we are returning something different. So it is possible for us to have multiple returns within our function. In actual fact, if we go back to our example that we created in Django here, we did exactly that. Remember here, we checked to see if we were being sent a post request from the user, whether the user's typed in something to the form and sent it to us. We used an if statement for that. And you can see here that we returned something different if the data was valid that the user sent to us and saved to the database. If the user did not send us a post request, then we're returning here just the render of the template and the form. So that was a function that we created earlier in this course. If you've missed that, then skip back to that section. That's going to be the if conditional statement section. Towards the end, we built this function.